So I really enjoy the fact that I get to talk with other housemates and compare notes, and we can talk about this experience that we've all had, and
Mm.
that view inside the house that we've all had. That's in a lot of ways it's a shared experience, it's a similar experience, and whatever year it was, there's a lot of things that are still the same. But we didn't get your view, Shane, and you had a
Mm.
job that I think people would be so jealous of, because you got to test Friday night games before they threw us housemates in there. Shane, where were you when you got this job? What were you doing?
So I was working at the cinemas.
Hmm.
And it was sort of like my casual job whilst I was studying at uni. And I had a friend at the cinemas who got a job in the production of Big Brother. So she was part of the behind the scenes crew and put a message out to everyone that was working at the cinemas. Hey, are you free on the weekend? We're going to do a rehearsal and we want you to pretend to be a housemate. And in that time, we did not know there were just some random names that were plonked out just to keep the secrecy in play. And then what happened was during that,
Random names of shows, you mean?
no,
Or,
random names of housemates. So
okay.
what happened was I think it was either the night before or the night of. We were pretending to be housemates, but we weren't given the actual names itself. And that was just to make sure that, in terms of secrecy, they didn't want to share too much information. And I just remember being in a holding room and actually walking onto the stage, pretending to be a housemate that, didn't really match to any one of the names. And
Hmm.
then, we just got to pretend to talk to Gretel. It was pretty much, it wasn't like a full on conversation. It was just to, do the rehearsals so that, the production and everybody that was involved on the night of the show work in time how the whole flow of the show will go.
Let me
And
catch
then,
up here, Shane, though. Are you saying that you did a rehearsal for the opening night of the show? This was before the show even launched.
yeah, so this would
Hmm.
have been in 2006 when I was invited, and it was just to make sure that everything was running smoothly, that that there was all the technical stuff that was put in place, and making sure that whatever Gretel had on his in her script that it was changed, it was
Hmm.
altered, and then as the rehearsals went going, like it was about I would say about 3 4 hours, just because there were a lot of retakes and a lot of let's start from the top or let's just change a couple of words. In that holding room where there was like a bunch of people, there was one person who messaged me about um, interested in being part of the Friday Night Live games, and
Hmm.
I had no wind about it because at the time, sort of me watching like I did watch the season in 2005, but
Hmm.
I kind of was just casually viewing the Friday Night Live games back in '05. She pretty much said to me, give me your contact number and I will get in touch with you to see if you're interested in being, a Friday Night Live games tester. And, unbeknown to me and what was going to happen was I just remember having to wait outside the front gates of the dream world where the old Big Brother house was
Hmm.
and having to sign paperwork and everything just to make sure that we were following through with confidentiality. And then we were walked sort of outside of the FNL arena, and then they put on sort of like our name bibs and safety equipment and other things for us to test the game. So it was literally a rehearsal on a Friday with probably about 16 or 18 other Ren people who I just met. And again, they were just like casual fans or, diehard fans, for example. And
I
I
mean,
just
talk about
remember,
a plum gig for a diehard fan to actually go on the set and
yes,
do what I've always said is the single best thing you get to do in the house is play Friday night games. There is nothing better.
yeah. And I think that the biggest joy for me would have to be testing the games that the housemates were going to do that evening and then watching it when you get home to see how the housemates did. And sometimes I sort of chuckle because I was like, oh, wow, we actually did it better than the housemates did, or something like that. There were times when I was looking at sort of, certain performances and I'm like, how did it ever get so, how did it get so bad for them to do it versus us where we sort of knew it? But at that time when we were rehearsing, there was the option to also test the Wednesday session. So what was different about Friday night rehearsal, what was different about the Friday night rehearsals versus the Wednesday was that the production team would go through and just double check that, all the, equipment and the props would fit and work. And then they were also testing other games for the next following weeks as well. The funny thing was is that we were sort of alluded to what the theme was, but we weren't aware of how it was going to be incorporated in the show in terms of the amount of people that were needed, and how it would work sort of in a setting. So, the Wednesday seemed to be more just testing the games for the sake of testing, whereas the Friday was putting yourself in the shoes of a housemate to see what it's like to test the Friday night games. So for me, I felt the Friday was more fun because, you were putting yourself to a housemate and then you were actually doing the games and the challenges that were there then as well.
Okay. And what do they pay you to do that?
So at the time, this was actually controversial. They only paid us $50 in
Right.
cash. And it was controversial because in your year, in 2007, there was a newspaper article from the Courier Mail
I
that,
remember this.
yeah. And I remember us walking out of the rehearsals and all these flashing cameras. And this is what was very deceptive of the journalists back then. They were taking
Hmm.
photos walking out of the rehearsals. And unbeknown, we were never under the impression that this was a slag on Big Brother. It was literally, we thought, oh, they're going to recognize us for the things that we were doing in the house and everything. So what I think really upset probably a lot of us the following week that we came back on was some of us saw our faces on Courier Mail and we're just like going, wow, they painted us so negatively about the way that they were paying us versus what was perceived when the journalists messaged us. And I thought that was very cunning of them to actually do that, purely because we were under the impression that they were given light of, sort of how fun this opportunity was, when in fact they were slagging us because of the work and the dollar amount that we were doing. To be perfectly honest with you, in that time, $50 to be put under that kind of spotlight and to test games and to meet people and everything, I think people are not aware of just how valued that could be to any fan or anybody. Like, honestly, the money was almost like a second entity. Like, I probably could have tested it for free if I wanted to, but it was just a small, tiny reward. Like, we were fed lollies and drinks. That there was staff that was looking after us. They were checking our safety, and I think the media pin on us in that negative light was, it really took us back a lot for most of the people that were there. I think I was on a different newspaper. I was on the MITX newspaper, and it made me look like I was it made me look like I was more of a villain in that instance, because what happened was housemates of the stand-ins who did really well in the rehearsals will be given like an extra $50, and that was
Hmm.
just best on show and everything. So, and not every week we were going to be able to do that. So you could be walking away with $50 or $100, for the night as well. But at no point did we ever think that would be shined a light so negatively. And I think what happened was, being paid $50, I mean, okay, it's just, small numbers or anything, but it was sort of cash in hand at that time. So there wasn't anything we didn't give them any bank details or anything like that. So, and to me, like, there was, what else would I do as a university student with $50? Like, that to me was, it's the experience that I was after. I wasn't there for the cash or the money at all at that
You
time.
sound exactly like a housemate. I'm not here
Yeah,
for the cash. I'm
yeah,
here
I
for the
know.
experience. But
Yeah,
the thing is, we kind of lied. We are there for the cash for a large
yeah.
part. But the thing is, I don't see how you could get painted as bad, because from what I saw of those articles at the time, they were saying, "Oh, isn't the production company terrible for paying backpackers next to nothing?" And they said called you backpackers at the time in
Mm,
the one that I saw.
Hmm.
next to nothing to throw themselves into a dangerous environment. But I understand what you're saying in terms of you would do that for nothing. I think people would pay to do that experience. People
Yeah,
would pay money to be able to go in and test these games.
yeah,
For a fan of the show, like that's absolutely massive.
exactly. And I think in this day and age, like, as I said, $50 was, very rich for me in terms of, having this additional income. But it never was the reason why I kept doing it either every week or every now and then,
Mm.
because I was looking at more of, okay, I get to meet, you know, people from the outside, for the next 3 months testing all these games. I get to see what production is like behind the scenes because I was studying I was doing a communications degree that focused on the media industry. So for me, it was also that enriching experience.
Hmm.
So to me, when the press made it such when the press made it so negatively around how we were treated and to refer to us as backpackers. I definitely wasn't a backpacker, and neither were the people that were actually doing the testing were backpackers or international
Mm.
students at all, because they were people. Half of them were genuine diehard fans of the show, or people that just were willing
Mm.
to make a quick buck out of testing games and having a great time. So I think, yeah, media has a nice way of making very poor very very poor perceptions of how we are made to look, and especially with the pictures. Like I just remember the faces. Like it looked like we were depressed, but in actual fact we were just exhausted. Like it's
Exhausted. Yep.
five it was literally 5 hours of rehearsing, and we had to test the games twice. So
Mm.
for them to put that article out and to say that we were exploited poorly, yeah, no, that was a cop out. That was a cop out from the media for us to say that. So yeah, no, I didn't agree with it at all.
I mean, even in terms of how that money back then, $50 meant more back in 2006 than what it means today. So we can't lose sight of that. That's a little bit of money. And to a uni student, there's so much worse jobs that you could be doing to earn a pineapple for the day.
Yep.
Um, and I guess you got your transport taken care of. You got lunch provided, and you went home with a 50 in your pocket, possibly 100. I
Yeah.
know I'm interested in this. You said so the best on show got an extra 50. Now, how did they judge that? Is that who won the Friday night games or who came up with the sneakiest tactic to get around something? What was it?
I think that was something that production had always done, but again, we're not too sure how that all happens, because obviously during the rehearsals they're watching us and they're probably seeing the people that we were playing along and everything. And so I just remember when we were testing the games, we were used to putting, like, we were always going to stick with the same housemate that we always wanted to do. And often what was funny was, so I'll take back a step. So I remember when in your season of 2007, I immediately picked yours, Jamie, just out of the fact that, okay, I don't, if I wanted to look at stereotypes or what people looked at best, I was like, okay, I'm happy to take the Jamie stereotype. That's completely fine.
I'm the nerd. All right, fair
Yeah, yeah.
enough.
But you know what was funny? And I don't know, and this is not to slag you on the show or anything.
No,
I would
go for
all
it.
I was always picked like within the middle of the pack. And the funny thing was that there was some elements of the games that I did much better than than you. No offense to you,
No,
but
none taken.
yeah. But then the funny thing was that
Dude, I was always
other
picked last.
yeah. And that was the thing. Like, it was just funny because every week when we caught up, we're just like going, they always pick Jamie last, and then I'm playing Jamie, and they're like, but they always pick me at the beginning. And it was only just because I had a balance. But then it was funny because, and I think that a lot of, for some reason, tactically, when you don't know these people, or sometimes when you do the rehearsal on the Wednesday and the Friday, I often get picked early because they're like, hang on, he's actually tested the games on the Wednesday. He knows what the game is going to be
Right.
like, and he's always going to have sort of that leg up amongst all the others who are testing these games for the first time. So that was where probably I saw why I was picked so early, not so much to do with the individual's personality, but the way that the game was going to be presented and who was actually going to do pretty well. So I think how production, and this is just a pure assumption of how that extra $50 was awarded, was that someone within production would be watching us during the rehearsals. They were want to see the person that really puts in 100% of the effort, whether there was a challenge where, you were slipping over, or whether there was like a challenge where you had to, dance to a nation, like you had to do 30 seconds where you had to, dance to your national costume, and then you had to, convince people why they should, put you through to the next round. So there was always going to be those elements. And I think that I can only recall one where I dressed up I dressed up as Heidi, like from Germany, like I represented Germany with the long, dress and everything. And then I started, dancing around and pretending that I was Heidi from Germany. And came down between me and a guy who dressed up as an American, put on a full on American accent. And then it was determined as we left out that I received the extra 50, not just based on the impression that I had dressing up as Heidi and putting on a German accent, but, from an overall perspective in terms of how far I went in rehearsals and all the other challenges that were happening beyond there as well. And they do tend to swap it out or change out the winners every now and then. It just really depends on those individuals that, really give it 100%, and those that, just are doing it for the sake of doing it, really.
I love the fact that you played me and I was your stand-in living in the house.
Mm. Mm.
I always put in. Did you see how much effort I put into Friday night? I gave it my all. I tried
You,
so bloody hard.
you did. I think that the one that I saw you did was the one where it was you and Travis, and you were holding up that those china set. To be
Yes, a
honest with you,
tray of tea above our
and tra-
heads.
yes, I remember the guy. Like I wasn't in that challenge, but I remember the guys doing that challenge, and they literally sucked. Like it actually was done much quicker than the way that you and Travis did it. I was like,
Hmm.
damn. Like, and I think that's what happened is that what you might think production, it will be like, oh, this will be just like a quick 15-20 second game, went far beyond what we saw on the show. So, you know,
See, I
perception
think the
means,
reason for that is because you guys are kind of doing it for fun, for a laugh, trying to beat each other. There's obviously a bit of competition there.
yeah,
But for us, this is serious. This is getting into the rewards room and getting real food. Do you know,
yeah,
we were largely eating a lot of vegan food, which
yeah,
isn't great.
yeah.
I've grown to like it a bit more now. I've
Mm.
got an appreciation for it in there. But I wanted so much to be in the rewards room to get real food and prolong my stay in the house. So
Yeah,
the stakes for us, I think, would be so much higher. So when it's something like you're squatted against a wall holding tea above your head, I could take the pain. I took
yeah.
so much pain because I wanted that prize so much more. I think that any of you guys probably as a stand-in would have wanted the win.
Yeah. I think the stand-in side of things, maybe that extra 50 was the sort of the piece of, thing that we were gunning for. So yeah, it's hard to, yeah, but I can definitely see why from being a housemate perspective, having that sort of that rewards room, that power, those prizes, so much was at play, which is probably why the
Mm.
housemates enjoyed it so much. From an FNL from a stand-in perspective, I think that extra 50 was probably more at play. But equally, it was just the people that you were sharing those experiences. I think, if anything, I wish that I had access to some of the video footage that was filmed for some of the ones that we did those games, because to compare what we saw on TV versus what we were testing, we were like, that was funny during our rehearsals, and then what we're seeing on TV was,
Yeah.
you know, so yeah,
There's a missed opportunity from Big Brother. They could be monetizing that content, right?
yeah, there was when was it? I think it was in 2006. There was one challenge where we were testing. It was a long piece of sushi that me and stand-in had to eat. And towards the end, what they didn't tell us that there was wasabi in the middle. And I think between myself and the other stand-in, we were gagging because it was hot and everything. And here we are pouring in milk and then the soy sauce. Like we just kept going. And the material was so funny that we had to sign another agreement to say, hey, can we actually put this on TV? Because this is part of the rehearsals.
Oh,
And
right.
then so I was like, yeah, sure, like happy for you to put this on TV. And then when the episode went to air, it never ended up showing because I think Perry and
What a
David,
letdown.
yeah, it was such a letdown because I think Perry and David did the exact same thing, but I don't know whether it gave the comical element or the surprise when they did it, because they started to put milk and the soy sauce right at the beginning, whereas for us, we didn't know that there was wasabi in the middle, and we didn't even realize how intense it was. So the reaction at that time was, "Oh man, this is so hot! I need to pour whatever I can just to cool me down." And we were struggling. Like me and my stand were just like in pain, just couldn't stomach it or put down that sushi roll.
I
And
shouldn't laugh at you, but it is funny. You
it
paint
was,
a very funny picture.
yeah, those were the moments that during the rehearsals was really awesome. And then it was when it was missed for that particular period, and I was watching that episode, I was like, oh, but I signed an agreement saying that this was going to be on air, and it ended up not being on air because
Mm.
apparently what Perry and David did was equally the same, which I will be honest, I'll beg to differ. But you
I
know,
did it better.
yeah, yeah.
So when they assign you to be a housemate, you kind of got to choose which housemate you were, because I'm looking at you and me, and I'm like, we're similar builds, we're probably similar heights.
Mm.
Has that got anything to do with it, or could they say get you to play one of the girls, considering your affinity for dressing up as as a German girl? No, I'm
No,
kidding. I'm just
no,
teasing.
no, 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 that's all
But I
right.
mean, would they get you to stand in for someone who was a lot different to you?
Yeah. So again, when I remember the first week that we did the testing, I think what happened was there was between the people that were doing the stand-ins, we were almost wanting to pair up based on where the personality is, or where, perceptions of what we think the housemates would do. And then as the time went, we stuck with those characters, or we stuck with those name bibs until those players got eliminated from the show. So then what would happen is that if I needed to be a different housemate, I'd be a different housemate. So again, it sort of just varied in terms of, how many people were going to be there and who was going to be testing. So I think once you left the house, Jamie, I ended up either taking, I think, Travis or Zach or something like that. But it was varied. And I think what happened was, when a certain housemate did leave, it was kind of like, oh, you were playing them for like the last couple of weeks, and now you have to pick another housemate. And obviously, whoever you had at the very beginning, you kind of want to stick out, throughout the whole sort of show. And then after you left the house, I ended up having just to pick whatever bib was available and stuck with it. I think I stuck
Right.
around with Travis's after you left, and then there was just some variations with whoever else was available as well. But it was to ensure that there was this, whoever amount of male and female housemates were left in the house, they had to make sure that there was the right amount of people. So, they wouldn't want, someone who was, a male housemate being played by a female stand-in. That wouldn't seem to be the case.
Yep.
But it's so hard because, like, even the ones that weren't great at Friday Night Live, they ended up winning, the stand-ins. So again, it's just sort of how things are perceived. And I think it also comes down to how people are on the day of the rehearsals, because having to rehearse it twice, I think there are some times when certain stand-ins were a little bit tired or exhausted, and then we ended up swapping bibs over, because I
Mm.
think there were certain stand-ins that were just exhausted, or they were tired, or they got hurt in there as well. So there was always going to be someone that was be like, oh yeah, I'll go and do, a challenge where I'm having to slip over something or anything else as well. So it's just to ensure that, when people are, 100% wanting to do it, they'll give it their all. But if they're just tired or exhausted, they're like, look, let's just swap bibs because I'm just not feeling 100% comfortable. So there was always going to be that flexibility. But I think equally, whoever we were assigned to, it was pretty much, we got a gun ho with it. And then I think there were times that when there was like these like random people who would show up one time and then they end up picking the bib that you would always get picked. That kind of, I think there were times that was quite insulting. I think, and I don't think it happened in the 2007 season, but I think it was
Mm.
more in the 2006 season. And it was probably one of probably the worst rehearsals we had. It was a mix of
Mm.
surf lifesavers who were partaking in it, and then just like the regulars that were doing it. And one of them actually took the bib that I had, and I was kind of a bit annoyed because I was just like, okay, what do they know? All right, sure.
Yep.
And then they gave no effort afterwards. Like they were just they weren't even trying. They put a bit of a downer towards the whole thing to the point where after one rehearsal, they decided to leave. And then whoever was still remaining, we
Mm.
ended up having to do fill-ins. So what happened was some people in the production or some of the ninjas actually had to fill in for those housemates whilst the people that remained still did the testing and everything. And I remember the production team having to, apologize, say sorry, and then we were informed that
Mm.
we would never have those kind of people ever to do testing again. It's not to say that the surf lifesavers, who were very well known to the public, were not going to be invited, but that was probably the one experience that I did that turned sour purely because
Mm.
they felt like that they were the better people. They were too athletic for the kind of things that they were doing, and that wasn't a best representation of the housemates that were in the house at that time. So to me, when that happened, I was like, we better not have those people ever again. So I think it
That
takes
makes
us.
sense because we most of us aren't professional athletes. We were meant to be regular people. We had a couple of ex-professional athletes, but for the most part, no. And I like that there was an unspoken kind of etiquette there that you mostly hung on to the same person. Does that mean were you doing an impersonation of me? Can you do a good impersonation of me? No, no, that's not it.
No,
You didn't have
that
to act
was
like
never.
me. You didn't have to
No,
stutter your words.
no, there was never I don't think that there was ever a time that we were mimicking or pretending to be the housemates that were there. We almost sort of felt like, yeah, who was the one that probably best resonated up to us? But then equally, like, who had the better chance of potentially winning the show? Because I think there were certain names that were almost avoided for the sake of avoiding, and that was just out of the fact that, I don't really want to be playing the person that everybody doesn't like on the show. So it was almost like, oh, okay. So I think it is sort of just like a hit and miss sometimes with who you had and who you got. But that unspoken rule of just picking the housemate that you were assigned to at the very beginning of the season is who you stuck with until they get voted off, and then it's a case of, okay, well, who do we got left? And I think there were times when some of it was just based on default because it was like, okay, well, these two names have been stuck with the same person, so I have to go with whatever was defaulted with me, which I think I had Zach at the time. And then I think when that was taken over by someone else, I was like, okay, then I'll take Travis then instead. So it was almost like, whatever you had towards the end of the show, you're pretty much left with who you've got, and then you just go with the flow, and then you just play to the best of your ability.
So it was a bit of a joke in our year that Joel was out first round every single time. um, did you do something for that in the rehearsals? Did the person that get Joel have to bomb out and have an absolutely rubbish display every time?
I think I think the person that was Joel as a stand-in actually did quite well. He was always. I remember he's been
Wrong.
put as. Yeah, I know. Well, I knew the guy that did him as a stand-in was always he was always the most competitive one. He was the one that was actually, doing quite well. So I think it was so lopsided between the Joel in the house versus the Joel that we had for stand-in. And that Joel in the stand-in always picked me within the first pick or two, purely because of
Ah,
what I did there as well. So again,
wrong.
I know that's the thing. It's so it doesn't what we saw on TV doesn't stack up to how the rehearsals go. And even I think we also took the joke out of it as well. Be like, well, if the housemates think it has to be this kind of pick, let's pick it the other way, which is why I was picked so early as opposed to the Jamie in the house being picked last on the show.
All right, rub it in, mate. Come on.
Yeah.
That's I think it was like often a personality thing. Like there's housemates wanting to pick to be in the same team as their mates, as opposed to who they thought was the the best or the worst. I didn't think my performance was that bad, but something I wanted to ask you about too was that one time we had to run this obstacle course dressed as gladiators. I don't know if you did this one and then go to the
Yes.
end and slam a
Yes.
raw egg down.
Yes.
Now, that particular set, I remember Thomas sort of said to me quietly after he'd run through it, he's like, it's all just plywood. Just smash through it. Don't even stop for the blades, the fake
Mhm.
blades that are spinning.
Mhm.
And so I took that on board and I just blasted through it. And we wrecked that set. We broke it. Did you ever break the set? Or did anyone break the set that you saw?
I'm just trying to think. I don't know whether there was a time. I think we were conscious about doing something of that scale, and I actually do remember Thomas running through it. And I think the reason why we were so careful of it is because we knew that the housemates were going to play these games anyway.
Mm.
So imagine if someone like us on the rehearsals did what Thomas did, and then you would have had production having to reconfigure that actual game on that evening. Like it would have just been a hot mess. And I think I can also think about what was it? There was one game as well. It would have been in 2008 when Saxon had the spaceship and how that was done. It was never meant to have tossed over to the point where that game became unusable. Like what happened was is that that was a game that was meant to go for more than 2 to 3 minutes, but the fact that he literally like threw straight past it, and then the bike actually turned over and then wrecked the whole game, that was not in the cards of what production wanted. So, in terms of how Thomas went about that production, I think we as stand-ins were very conscious about how we were taking on these games, knowing that well the housemates are going to do it. So, is there a safety risk? Is there a way to sort of cheat in the way that these games are played as
Mm.
well? So at no point did we ever think, oh, let's just make a complete wreckage of it, because I think that there were times, and there would have been other games in past seasons and also in '06, but don't recall, where we were trying to be as careful as possible not to wreck it, because obviously if we did, I feel like that production would have very little time to repair whatever
Mm.
it was that we damaged. But then equally, I felt like that in itself could, how can I say it? It may not look well. It may not look well to the producers who are watching above us if we were to destroy or wreck the game the way that Thomas did it. I can
Okay,
understand.
I see
I
what you're
can.
saying.
I can understand why Thomas did it, and perhaps in the retrospect, he probably would be able to do it. But I think
Mm.
I think we wouldn't want if we were to do what Thomas did in the rehearsals. I think the concern was, oh, they now have to go back and try and get it repaired and fixed, and it's all going to be, or the show they'll have to do something alternate or an alternate thing for
You
it to
might
be
not get invited
replaced.
back. I could.
That was the other thing. That was
That
the
would
other
be the
thing. You would not.
concern.
That would be the other concern. You would not be invited back because you obviously have no respect for the people that put all this effort in putting in all the work. I mean, maybe when the housemates did that challenge, it was okay. Well, whatever happens to the actual game itself, it happens. You know, whereas
Now,
in
the reason
rehearsals,
the reason why Thomas told me that and why he did that was because that got us to go through it faster. So it was a
mm,
competitive advantage. It wasn't just to break it for the sake of breaking it. Oh God,
yeah,
no. We had full respect for everything that had been done and set up for us. But it's like don't slow down.
yeah,
just run through it.
yeah,
It was meant to be, like a mock spinning blade, I think, but it
mm,
didn't hurt. So I
no,
just
oh
blasted
no,
through it.
oh yeah,
And
and that's I was going to say that was exactly what we were doing. Like we had to go out as fast as possible. So if that hit us, it hit us, but it wasn't like sharp or anything else as well. Like it was just seeing the seas. So I think perception is everything pretty much in that case.
that's right. And after the games, we'd always go inside. And I do recall sharing or comparing injuries with other people. I had my fair share of skin knees, bruises, bumps, all of that. Did you cop any bad injuries? Did you see any bad ones while you were there?
Yeah, there were definitely bruises and bumps from my end, mainly for the ones where there was like a slippery surface or something like that.
They were the worst.
They were the worst, but it was also the
The most
funniest.
fun.
They were
Yeah.
the most fun. And it depends on how you see it. And for some reason, I remember the 2008 season, the one game where we had, I think it was between Nobby and Bridget. They had this. It was probably the stickiest substance we've ever seen, or like in the time there, because in the prior seasons of '06 and '07, we thought, okay, well, these are just the things where, okay, if you slip over, you slip over. But whatever they did in the first episode 2008 for that substance, it just was too slippery. And I don't know whether they've changed the formula or whether they bought this new substance or something like that. But I think the two of us who tested, who were, we could almost say, veterans in that case, could not believe how often we stacked it, because I think legs were in the air and everything was just, to the point where everyone in the production and also the stand-ins watching just couldn't stop laughing because we just kept slipping over and over nonstop. And I remember having to wash ourselves off it, and it took forever to get rid of
Mm.
the substance that they were putting on. So going back to the injuries, some of them were quite serious if it wasn't dealt with properly. And I think there was one challenge. I think you had to like go around in a circle, and then when the music stopped, you had to go in and actually stand on a record or stand on some sort of surface. And there was somebody who I think either sprained their ankle or twisted their wrist. And that in itself, yeah, like people, like I knew that the housemates would be competitive. I think there was also a level of competitiveness in some of the standards as well.
Mm.
But I think what we were not prepared for are perhaps some of the potential, sort of injuries that may present itself. So thankfully, I didn't have anything that was bruising to the point where I wasn't going to be invited back. But I often found that if people were, having to sit out or not partake or participated, I think that was also where, a fill-in stand-in would come into place. So, for example, what happened was one person who did get injured, whilst they took part in the second rehearsals, they were almost like having to swap a bib over, but then they were just the ones that were just sitting on the bench just to make it look like, everything was okay.
Mm.
So there was always a medic on standby. There was always someone there that was just checking us just to see if anything was quite serious. But yeah, at no point when I did stack it did I ever think, oh gosh, like you are exhausted. I remember just going home and just be like, I'm not going to do anything. I feel like I've done my workout for the
Oh yeah.
day. Yeah. And, the bruises and everything else as well, I'll just take it by the chin. Often I'd go to work the next day and then just be like, what did you do? Or they're like, what challenge did you do on the show that made you get a bump in your head or something like that? And I just said, look, there's no comment. Just, I'll just take it I'll take it by the chin.
And if you hurt yourself, would you get medical treatment afterwards, or
Yeah, so there was
is that part
always,
of it?
yeah, that was part of it. So what happened
Mm.
was is that if it happened, like some of those ninjas who were all first aid trained would just immediately go up to you and just be like, is everything all right? Is there anything that you need? Where does it hurt? And everything else as well. Because, I think on the show, like on the rehearsals, they were unmasked. So we kind of recognized their names and their faces in some way. And obviously, they just want to make sure that they had the best interest at heart. Because obviously, the ones that they were really conscious about are the regulars, because they're like, oh, we don't want to lose this regular if they're not here, or and funnily enough, like even some of the people that were the camera crew and everything else as well, if there was a week that we weren't there, they were just worried like, oh, did we hurt them in this challenge? Were they, sort of, were they missing because this happened to them? Often that's not the case. I mean, there are times when it came down to like, the final seven or the final six, I think there were times when production were very strategic on the stand-ins that they wanted to be partaking in. And I think that there was only like 2 or 3 weeks where I decided not to partake on the Friday. And I remember it was the penultimate one that they didn't want me to take a part of, because they said, no, we actually wanted Shane to be in the final night of the rehearsals, because we know that these challenges are going to be the big grand finale, and we kind of want the best stand ins that will actually partake in it. So towards the end of the series, where it was down to those small number of housemates, I was often asked, "Hey, can you like take a break this week and come back the following week?" Which I was okay with. Um, and then what was funny was is that production were like, "Yeah, we kind of missed you last week." And like, we're like, "What do you mean?" And they says, "Oh, the people that were testing were pretty boring. There wasn't anything funny. There wasn't anything that was, entertaining. We just kind of expected that you were going to be here and that you would give it everything and all." And I said, "Of course I would. Like I'm not going to not provide you with any level of entertainment." So I think production definitely had favorites in terms of the ninjas who were partaking. They everyone was given equal care in terms of those injuries, but then also those people that were behind the cameras and getting those up close shots as well, they were also just wanting to make sure that our safety was also taken care of as well. So at no point did I ever feel like that environment was unsafe for us. I think what they just wanted to do is to ensure that if we were able to prevent any injuries that was going to happen, that it get addressed sooner rather than later. But then whatever happens on the show, anything is possible, really.
I'm glad to hear that because the ninjas, in my experience, were all great people. It was so hard for me. I remember being told, don't talk to the ninjas, don't address the ninjas. And, they'd be coming along and they'd put safety equipment on me.
Mm,
And it was so hard for me to not say, thank you. Just
mm.
like a nice human being that I am, just one
Yes.
human to another. You're doing something for me. Thank you. And I wasn't allowed to. And Travis and I would sometimes do this thing where we would turn around and follow the rule by going, thank you to Travis, even though it was the ninja putting it on, but I wanted the ninja to hear it to say that. So then I wouldn't feel as weird about the whole thing. And afterwards, out of the people in the crew that I got to party with, the ninjas were the greatest. They were
Mm,
just the most fun, nice, amazing people ever,
mm.
and they were the ones that I truly enjoyed. Just I don't know, just having drinks with, swapping stories with, talking with, you know, Gretel wouldn't give me the time of day after the show. So the ninjas were
Yeah.
cool though. They were fantastic. So I was super happy to hang with them and party with them. Yeah. If someone else wanted to do this and get into doing something like this, like how would someone get this gig that you got?
To me, it really came down to maybe right place, right time. I
Luck.
think that yeah, luck had to be the case. I mean, I think I was very fortunate to be given that opportunity, especially with what I was at the time. I worked at the cinemas for over 10 years. So for me, the 3 years that I did the Friday night games testing, it fit in my schedule so well. And for that kind of opportunity to present itself, it'd be interesting to see if the new season next year, for the 2026 season, should they bring back Friday Night Live games, who are going to be the ones testing those games? Now, I'm going to put it on the record, and I will say I'll put it on the record. I'd be more than happy to do it again, and I'll work it around my current work schedule and everything else as well, just to make it happen.
Excellent producers, please take note.
Yes,
Shane
please.
is going to make himself available. Have you
I'll,
changed your phone number since then?
no, my
No,
phone
same
number,
phone number. You've got his
save.
number.
Yeah,
Ring him
yeah,
up.
yeah. I would be open to that because I think what it also happens is that they've had Mike Goldman, you know, doing the narrative for the Channel 10 series. So again, if they want sort of those OG sort of things, I think that should be the case there as well. Because I often find that for anyone that wants to do that experience, there's got to be a lot of you got to do it with the right intentions. Um, and it's not some and it shouldn't come with the caveat of, oh, I want to be paid a certain amount of money to do these kind of things. Because I think when you look at all the other reality shows like Australian Survivor, they probably have like they call a dream team where they will go out there and actually test those challenges. It's probably it's got to be treated the same way as they do with Big Brother in terms of the people that are going to go in this house testing these games and making sure that they do it. So for me, if people are going to wanting to go in there, it's a case of actually knowing people within that production that could get you into there as well. And I think that sort of is where I have a lot of that luck happen, like during 2000 of this year actually, because after then, a couple of years after Big Brother, I actually had my taste of being on a game show. So I did the Chase Australia in 2016, and then
You
this
did?
year, yeah, I
Okay.
did. Yeah, so I did that, and then this year I was in 2 episodes of Mastermind Australia on the SBS, and then I filmed episodes of Tipping Point, Hard Quiz, and Millionaire Hot Seat. That's to air in 2026.
As a
So
contestant?
as a contestant, yes,
Yeah, okay, cool.
across things. So I think it all. I think when I say to it, it's the right place, the right time. It all has to sort of fit into it, and it's the yearning desire for it. So if anyone
Mm.
really wants to be part of the stand-in experience, I think people need to just probably do their research on it, have a look and see where their connections are. And I think in this day and age, it's gonna there's gonna be a different way of how it's going to be conducted. I don't know who would be in that position to to manage a whole group of individuals and people, but it's got to be people that have the love for the show, and obviously just, I would say, zest for life. Really, it's got to come down to those right group of people, and that sort of really have
Mm.
spread along my career as well in terms of what I've done. After I've left the cinemas and moved into the education industry. So I engaged with a lot of international students and did many activities with them. So a lot of what I did in Big Brother as a stand-in really set me up for what I am currently doing now in my career.
Have you auditioned for the show? You would kick butt in the Friday night games now. Be like you've done more Friday night games than any housemate has ever done.
Yeah. I don't know whether that would hold against me. I don't know. If I look, if I wanted to be on the house, I would have to consider it. And again, it has to be that right place, right time process. I mean,
Have you
depends on how.
auditioned before?
I remember auditioning early on before the Friday Night Live games existed, and
Okay.
I don't think I ever went any further. Um, if the incarnation of Big Brother next year is to be the same as what they did this year, perhaps in terms of the time frame, I just don't know if I could afford myself to be in that environment for over 100 days. I don't know.
Mm.
I've got a trip lined up in August that's going to be 4 weeks of annual leave, so I don't know how that's going to work in terms of it. But I mean, if ever Big
Trips come
Brother,
and go, Shane. This, if you had the opportunity,
yeah, I to
one
be look,
shot, one opportunity, as
that's
Eminem said.
yes. Put it this way, I'll put on the like I said, I'll put on the record if Big Brother wants me to assist either as a housemate or perhaps as someone behind the scenes assisting, I would be open to that prospect, provided that it works within the parameters of what I currently do at the moment, which anything is possible.
So, how long have you been a fan of the show?
Oh, probably. Oh, good question.
Did you
I
watch
mean,
the first ever
I
series?
remember watched the first series. I remember having to like almost watch it every night and really being obsessed with Sarah Marie. And then what would happen was in season 2, I remember my year 9 diary, and I don't know whether I've kept it or not, but I would always write down, you know, on this because we had a small block for Saturday and Sunday. We'd be like, okay, who's up for eviction and everything. So I'd write that down and make it into a thing. So it was sort of in the vernacular of, not just your assessments and your homework, but also who was going to be evicted at Big Brother on that Sunday. So I think my obsession there sort of started in the first few seasons, and then there was a little bit of a slowdown period within, the early seasons. And I think once I started testing games in 2006, I think my level of interest just started to pick up again as well. So, yeah, it's sort of had its ups and downs. But I mean, this season I definitely was watching it. Only because there was really not much on. And thank goodness it went back to Channel 10, to be honest with you, because the other networks that took it on really sucked at it or just didn't have any interest in it whatsoever.
And so you think that Friday Night Games has got a good chance of coming back? Because I know the call is out there for it, and I really hope they do listen because it is such a great thing, but it's also very expensive.
Mm. If they don't, I think they would. It'd be silly of them not to put it back. If they're trying to find an audience in that sort of demographic that's really going to be drawn to it, they would definitely um, have to have it back. Yeah, I think expenses and costs. I think they'll have to find a way of doing it, but it'll be interesting to see how next year's season is going to be presented. So yeah, I'd be all for another Friday Night Live for 2026.
So, being that you've been a fan of Big Brother for so many years,
Mm.
what are the biggest moments that really stand out from the show across the whole lot in your mind?
Oh, that's a
I
big
mean, Sarah
one.
Marie, it'd have to be the bum
Oh
dance,
yeah. Oh yeah.
probably.
Yeah, definitely. That's
Imagine
definitely up. I would
that
say in
was a
my top.
thing.
That was definitely a thing. I remember that. I remember her doing like she released a single, and I think they were doing like she was signing the singles or something like that as well. So apparently the pandemonium around Sarah Marie was huge then. I'm just trying to think the other moment. I think the other moment that I can think of was when Merlin walked on stage and had that banner to say "Free the refugees" as well. I mean that
Yeah.
that in itself at the time was quite a peak TV moment there as well.
Shocking.
It was, and I think 2006 with all the controversies that happened throughout that season, it literally was that roller coaster of just how people felt towards certain housemates at the beginning, at the start, in the middle, and then how it all flowed and everything like that. That was a bit of a roller coaster in terms of what we were going through as well. And then thankfully in your season, it was just the controversy around us being paid, peanuts. But other than that, like it was sort of it needed I wouldn't say it needed to scale back, but it just needed to slow down a bit and just to try and get it back to what it used to be without all the gimmicks. I don't know whether season six had too many things all happening. Maybe it was just so much to process. But then as we got into season seven, it just sort of went, okay, we now know what we're dealing with. Um, and then I don't know, the final season in 2008, I don't know, I just started to be honest with you, like I started to lose interest purely because I think things just got a little bit too out of hand. I think it started the gimmicks just started to become a little bit too much.
Hmm.
They've had Carson Kressley on the show, and then they had Pamela Anderson, and then they did all these fake evictions, and like it's sort of when you were comparing 2007 your season to 2008, I was like, something shifted really left that didn't sort of make any sense. And even from a Friday Night Live perspective, some of the games that we were testing in the 2008 were like, oh, hang on, but I already did this challenge in last year, and it was just very, very differently. And it wasn't to say that I wasn't interested in doing the games. It was just that the spark and the magic really got lost in that season for some reason. I don't know what was missing, whether Channel 10 was trying to save up a bit because I kind of felt like, okay, it's clearly Big Brother's last season in 2008. Why we're doing this challenge again? Or they're like, hang on, I've seen this costume before. It's just been redesigned this certain way. And so we're just like, okay, so even the challenges that we did in your season, we're like, oh, we did this already. We know what to do already. How do we just hammy it up in a way,
I do remember there were some recycled costumes. I remember getting some costumes and like looking at the name tag and I'm like, oh, Dino. Okay, I'm Dino now. And we didn't have a Dino in my year. He was from a couple of years
Yes.
prior.
Yeah.
Um, if if anyone wants to audition for the show and they really want to get onto it, Shane, what would be your advice for how to get onto the show as someone who's seen it from both the outside and a bit from the inside?
Yeah. For me, I think it just really comes down to authenticity. It's just And I think it also has to come down to, you know, being yourself, but not doing it where it's not believable, you know? Um, and I'm just going to use the analogy of what I've done with all the game shows that I've recorded. Because even after when I did Mastermind, I started just applying for all the other shows, and I had that momentum. The one thing I never did was altered it to the point where I was trying too hard, but then I didn't want to scale it back where I was giving too little. So it's just trying to understand who you are as a person, being the person that you are without hamming it up, and just presenting yourself to how you want to be perceived to the general public. And I think that that really was how, the 2025 season, having observed that season and watching it again, I said, oh, will it be as it is, unlike the other seasons when it was on 7 and 9? And I said, okay, I'm going to give it a go and see. And I said, okay, I feel like they've got the right mix of people, that there were these individuals that, you wouldn't necessarily see. Like the Connor, who had the Tourette syndrome. Like I knew Connor when we were working at the cinemas years and years ago. So the fact that he was put there as a housemate came to me as like a complete surprise, because I was like, oh,
Mm.
he's got Tourette's. And I remember that. But as long as it's not taken, it's sort of building that level of awareness. But I think it's also great to have those kind of people, because those are quite what we need. But you don't. But I think it's also the same thing about diversity and inclusivity. Like we got to have that sort of ability. We want to have that ability to have the right group of people, but it's just making sure that it's the person that you really want to be. Like you don't want to not sell yourself enough to not be on the show.
Mm. And did anyone ever ask you for an autograph or a picture? Did you ever get any of that at all? Someone must have, right? If you're playing a prop on set.
I don't think I was ever asked for a signature at all when I was testing the games. I only remember there was one stand in the 2008 season. I think I was playing Nobby as the housemate for that year. And so when he got eliminated, the stand-in actually met Nobby in person, and had a signature, had it signed by him, and then it was given to me as like a gift. And I was like, oh, do
Oh,
I need
that's
to put
cool.
which was cool. I don't know whether that was Nobby's actual signature, to be honest with you, but it was quite nice in a way. But yeah, no, at no point have a signature or anything else as well have been asked by anybody to this date yet.
Paparazzi has snapped you though. That's it. That
That
was
is
the high
true.
point of your celebrity status, would say,
Yeah.
making it to the front page of a newspaper.
Yeah, it was the newspaper that, when you go on it was when you get on the train
The
in
free one on the
Brisbane,
train.
the free one on the train, the one that gets printed out in the afternoon, and then it's
It's a
just like
Melbourne thing.
yeah. I know in Brisbane they had it as well, but I just remember that it was just slapped. It was on the same. I was in the same front page as Brad Pitt, so I thought, well, if I'm showing the same
Why
front
not?
page, I think, well, I'll just take it. So yeah, I feel like I need to dig it up somewhere. It's definitely somewhere in the house, but yeah, it's
So
kooky.
Shane, I want to go back to something too. There was something I missed from earlier, and that was the saying the controversy around you guys and your payments and all of that getting into the news, and that was a big thing.
Yeah.
The other big controversy that year was and I was involved in this, throwing slime at the Mexican flag, and we had to hit it, and it was whoever's flag weighed the most that got the slime on it.
Mhm.
And when I came out, I remember seeing that was a huge controversial thing. I made, they'd played footage of me in Mexican Parliament, I think, doing this. And I remember feeling so dumb afterwards, because I went, how did I never even think about the fact? All I could think about, I was focused, is win Friday night games. That's all
Mm.
I could focus on. And I was just like so determined that just throwing slime at a different nation's flag didn't even raise anything in my brain. It didn't register that maybe this wouldn't be regarded too well by that country. Do you remember that? Were you involved in that?
I remember being involved in the Wednesday rehearsals and the Friday rehearsals of that particular week. I don't think any one of us testing those games had ever thought that we were going to upset a country
Mm.
based on the fact that we were hitting, you know, the slime and trying to make it heavy. I feel like, and this is again something taken so out of context and be shown, in Mexican Parliament of us testing those sort of games, not realizing that there was going to be an implication of it as well. And the fact that it became so controversial. I mean, if it was to be done today, I feel like it was going to be the same thing again. Sometimes things get taken so badly out of context that it's going to be really interesting to see how games are going to be done in the future without causing this much grief and upset whatsoever. At no point during the rehearsals or the practice did we ever think, oh, would this upset, the nation of Mexico? The fact that we're degrading them by throwing slime and everything else as well. No point did we ever think of it.
No.
Because it was, and that was the thing. I think what happens is that you have these keyboard warriors and these people who have nothing else better to do than complain and whinge about the joy in what people are doing and delivering. I think in itself, I can see why the perspective from the Mexicans, how they would be upset by the whole thing. Unfortunately, I don't know what the fallback was or whether the Mexican government were aware of it, but I feel like that there would have had to be some clear explanation by Network 10 and the producers around the fact that it was not to disrespect the nation. It was a harmless game that made it into a political or a negative narrative. And to me, at no point did I ever think that was going to offend an entire nation when we have no relation with Mexico in terms of, I don't know if there was a free trade agreement or something. But to me, I think again, same with the whole situation with us being underpaid. That in itself was just blown so out of proportion for all the wrong reasons. And I feel like that kind of outcry would be so different if it was to happen this year or any like this year. I feel like it was going to be much more worse.
Now, that Mexican games, that's the one that I actually won. So did
Yes.
you do the right thing by winning that in the rehearsal as well? Or did you win any game wearing my bib?
I definitely won. I definitely did win with your bib, but it would have to be the week before.
Oh, you
Don't
were
know
so
what.
close.
Yeah, I won it the week before the Mexican week. I think I was a finale for the Mexican, but chili con carne. Yeah,
It was a
that's
quiz. How could you not ace a quiz?
to be honest I think that there were times when, like, I thought, oh yeah, if I just put as much chili con carne, that would help. But man, I'm not a chili con carne fan. Like that to me was like, I think it was funny because now that you mention it, I think because I think that was they did the gross food challenge before the Mexican night, I think. So what happened was I think
Yeah.
the producers actually did comment and actually said, so, you'd eat fish eyeballs, guts, brains, anything out of the thing, but you can't finish a chili con carne. Like
Right?
that was just the running gag that they had, because I was just like, okay, we could just give you all the gross food, but you just can't eat chili con carne. I'm just like, to be honest with you, it's just not my taste. It's not my choice of flavor.
Dude. I'm glad that you won at least one Friday night games, and it's and so you and I are on par with that, one each.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And and if we can get you back in as a Friday night games tester in upcoming series, the producers have still got your number. They can get in touch or they can contact
Mm-hmm.
me, and I will put them in touch with you. Shane, thanks so much for taking the time to have a chat with me today. I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate you standing in and making sure that Friday night games were safe for me.
Yes.
And the rest of the housemates, you potentially saved lives doing what you're
Thank you.
doing, and that shouldn't be taken too lightly. You put your body on the line for all of us.
Yeah. It
Thanks
was
so
a
much,
pleasure.
Shane. It was so good to have a chat with you. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Jamie. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.